welcome you to another episode of the Southern Gal's Kitchen. We're going to make a wonderful, wonderful roast today with a lot of herbs and seasonings. And I use red wine and broth and onions and lemons and lots of good things. But I'll go through that step by step. And then we're going to do a Southern style barbecue baked beans. So just stick with us. 2-pound chuck roast ready. To season it, I just put flour in a pan. This is whole wheat flour. You can use whatever flour you like. And my seasonings is I have a teaspoon of thyme from my garden, ground up thyme, 1 teaspoon of ground garlic, 1 teaspoon of ground onion powder, 1 teaspoon of the bought steak seasoning. You can make your own, obviously. There's a seasoning called 6 peppers that I buy, and I've got a teaspoon of that in here, half a teaspoon of rosemary ground from my garden, and then just a little bit of salt and pepper. I like to really save, because some of this has salt in it, I like to mix this and put that on my meat to flour it so I can dredge it. And I do dredge it in heat, and then I just sprinkle a little bit of salt and pepper on the meat itself while it's dredging. And the reason I do it lightly is because there is some salt, like I said, in here. The 6 peppers has salt, the steak seasoning has salt. So you don't want to, you can always add salt at the end if you need to, but you can't take it out, obviously. So I like to just dredge my meat and all these seasonings. This is what's going to give it all that wonderful flavor. And then sprinkle that salt and pepper lightly on the meat. I don't even do much pepper because the 6 peppers is pretty spicy anyway. This is how spicy you want it. You can leave the pepper out, but a tiny bit of salt is just sprinkled on is good. Now this is pretty browned off on one side, so I'm going to turn it over. Pretty good sized roast. My dog likes meat. She eats good dog food, but we give her meat too. So we're going to let the other side brown off, and then like I said, we'll sear off the ends. And to do the ends, you just take your tongs or a big fork, with a meat fork, and you just sear off your ends like that, your sides. It's not hard to do at all. We'll go ahead and let this sear off. And then I'm going to transfer this to a much bigger cast iron pot because I don't have a lid that is tight enough for this one. And I'll show you that in a minute. I just wanted to have this for the video so you could see it. And I've got a big cast iron that I put sourdough in, and it's really, really heavy. A friend that gave it to me one time, it's really good for sourdough. There's lids I've used heavy for making. It's great for making sourdough, and it's great for making cast iron's great to cook a pot roast in anyway. I do have a roaster that it was my mother's, and I like to cook in it too. But I really like my cast iron. Okay, I have moved the roast now to the bigger pot that has the lid that's going to, a heavy lid, a heavy pot, but it will fit on there. It fits on there tight. When I take the tongs out, maybe, when I fit that on there, it'll fit really tight and it'll cook well that way. My other cast iron is in the oven with my baked beans, so I don't want to mess with that. So my roast is seared off. I took all the drippings out of the bottom and put a little bit of wine in there to get you want all that drippings out of where you cook that roast. So they're all in here too. We're going to put in a cup of beef consomme, and I just buy the can. And then a cup of, I like red wine in beef. All the alcohol will cook out. If you don't want wine, just use the beef broth and maybe some water. I don't know, but you want flavor. I'm going to put 1 whole potato in. I've cut it up in 8. This was a big potato, the Yukon Gold. Cut it up in 8 pieces. It was a big Yukon Gold potato. Not a baked potato, but a red potato or a Yukon Gold. 1 onion just chopped up in about 8s too. So you have all the seasoning from that pot roast, you have all those herbs, peppers, 6 peppers, garlic, onion, the red wine, the beef. This is a really Southern Gal's awesome pot roast. It's the way I like to make it, and just put it on the cook and let it cook long and slow. So we'll leave it in the oven until it just gets really, really, really tender. And then we'll take it out. baked beans will be done by then. You can make some good old homemade biscuits to go with this. It's going to be awesome. To make our baked beans, I use my Dutch oven. I'll get it out in just a minute. And I use 2 cans of pork and beans. You can use 2 cans of pinto beans. So you do it the way you want to. I like the pork and beans, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. For this recipe, we're going to use 2 cans of beans. Now, I've got time to cook them, so I did use the can because we do buy some canned ones, but I really think fresh is always the best answer. And I cook them all the time, and I cook white beans all the time. But for ease of the recipe, if you don't want to cook them, just use 2 cans. Just drain them really well. Some people say rinse them. I don't worry about that. I just drain them. And then we have other ingredients. We have 1/4 cup of brown sugar. And if you've watched my videos, you know that I make my own sugar blend. It's half brown sugar, half brown alternative brown sugar. Cuts my carbs in half that way, and it still has the taste that I want. 1/4 cup. You can use just brown sugar if you want to. We have 2 tablespoons of dark molasses. So we'll put that in. These are kind of a sweet southern style baked bean. Put all of that in there. And 1/4 cup of tomato paste. Now what I do, you can buy tomato paste in tubes, I know, but I usually don't. I usually have the canned on hand. That's what I had today. And what I do is I use what I'm going to use out of the can, the little can. And then the rest of it, I flatten it out, label in my bag, and put it in the freezer. You can keep it for a long time. Next time you need tomato paste, I do pizza sauce that way. I do any kind of tomato sauce or whatever. If I just use part of a can, I will put the rest in the freezer. I also dehydrate my own tomatoes, tons of them, and I'll do a dehydrated tomato sometime for you, but I keep a lot of those in the freezer. And you make tomato paste and put them in chilies and all kinds of things because they dehydrate and they get real crunchy. I keep my dehydrated in the freezer in a bag. They don't take up much room at all. And then I can drop some of that into my either water to rehydrate it, maybe 1/4 cup hot water, or if it's chili, I just drop it down in the chili. So I kind of do that, but it's hard to give a measurement unless you put it in water and rehydrate it. Then you can come up with 1/4 cup. When you hydrate tomatoes like that, the more of the dehydrated tomato that you use, the thicker it's going to be. So you would use more to make tomato paste and less to make tomato sauce. But just a little tip there, if you like dehydrating like I do, I dehydrate lots of stuff. You could even dehydrate this tomato paste, but that's just too easy to just stick in the freezer. Okay, we need a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. We'll add that in. 1/2 teaspoon of dried mustard. We'll add that. We're going to use just a tiny bit of, you can do a pinch of powdered nutmeg. I like to buy the little nutmeg nuts and just grate a little bit in there. I don't grate too much. Not a big nutmeg fan, but a little bit goes a long way. I'm going to do 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. I grind my own pepper a lot of times. I buy black peppercorns. I grind my own salt. That way you can have the whole berry. You may have the whole black pepper pod. You can grind it into coarse with your little grinder. I have it's a coffee grinder, but I use it for herbs and things and just keep it cleaned out. I don't drink coffee, don't use it for coffee. And you can make your coarse pepper or your coarse salt. You can make it a little bit less coarse, or you can make it as fine as you want to. So I kind of like that, and that way I've got the different kinds on hand. We have a 1 cut up onion. I've already cut it up into just chunks in there. You don't have to worry about fancy dices. Just cut them up, put them in there. I've got them kind of small chunks. They're not tiny, but pretty small. That way they'll cook up in there good. These are easy baked beans, and they're just really, really good. Now I also have 1 1/4 cups of water we're going to add in here. Just pour it in. And we have 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. I like to use like a grapeseed or sunflower oil in here. This is 1% grapeseed oil. You have to read your labels. Some of it's not 100%. And I like to buy the 100%. That's a nice flavor for your baked beans. Then we have a little spice. This is jalapenos. Now I dehydrate jalapenos all the time. I buy the jar ones. They're just easy. And then I dehydrate them. And you keep them for a long time in a jar. And then when I need a teaspoon, chop them up in little pieces. These are chopped up. So we've got a teaspoon of that. If you want more heat, you can put more, but that's all I want in there. Don't like it too spicy, but I like it a little bit spicy. So it's kind of my take on that. Okay, and then we have a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. This is sea salt that I've ground up pretty fine. Kind of mason jars, a small one to keep my different kinds of salt in. That way I don't have to grind it every time I use it. So we got a 1/2 teaspoon of that. That's it. 1/2 teaspoon. It's really a teaspoon. I thought I had a teaspoon measured out here for some reason. It's a teaspoon of the salt. Okay, we're going to mix these up, and then they're going to go in the oven at 400. I have my oven preheated to 400, and they're going to cook at least up in 30 minutes. They should be pretty good in 30 minutes. So these are good baked beans. They're good left over, and they're just amazing. So we're going to have them with our roast tonight. I'm going to get these beans in the oven and let them cook, and then I can set them out of the oven if I need to. My roast can cook, but I don't want to cook on 400, and I have 2 ovens, so I can put one in a separate. If you don't have 2, just cook these. You can always reheat them up. Just let them set, and they'll be fine left over. Look at that. Once we get all those ingredients in, we want to add in 2 pieces of uncooked bacon. You know, just bacon you buy in the store. And I just cut them in half, and that just helps flavor them. It makes them really good. You don't have to have bacon. If you would make a vegetarian, you could, but you certainly add the bacon in there. I'm going to cover these. They'll go in the oven. I like my cast iron to cook lots of things in. If you watch my shows, you know I use it a lot. I use cast iron pans. I use anything else. I just like them. They're easy to clean. I do not put them in the dishwasher. Never ever. I've had most of my cast iron for 40 plus years. It's just not going to wear out. It's not going to go anywhere. It cooks well. I do my sourdough in this. I have a bigger cast iron than this to do my sourdough bread. I'm going to make that one day for you. But these will go in the oven. Roasted potatoes are out of the oven, and onions, and they just smell amazing in here. This will be one of the best roasts you'll ever eat. If you'll just give it a try, you're going to love it. It's so tender, it's so juicy. I need a knife to cut it. And it's all really good. So much flavor from the seasonings that we put on there, and cooking it low and slow, and really just a chuck roast in general. It's just a really good roast to have. It is excellent. Potatoes tender, it's really good. The onions are just really sweet in here. I just can't say enough good about it. Just have to give it a try. Thanks for watching.